Becky Harling is a gifted communicator with a passion for seeing the Bible enthrall women's hearts. She joins us today to talk about her latest project, Freedom from Performing: Grace in an Applause-Driven World. Finding grace, I guess, in an applause-driven world. Hi, Becky. How are
Valerie.
you?
It's great to be here with you guys.
Well, you're right. It's certainly applause-driven world, and we're going to talk about that. But you have your own story to tell. That's why when I was reading this, Freedom from Performing, and that sets me free immediately. I kind of got rid of performance a while back, but tell us about
you.
Right. It's so freeing.
Yes, yes.
Tell us about your journey and what brought you to this project.
Well, you know, I was raised in a Christian home. It was a ministry home, and from the outside, that home looked perfect. But on the inside, it was anything but perfect. And so the messages I grew up with as a child were that we were to be the perfect family in every way. And so I carried those messages all the way into my adult life. And unfortunately, part of my story was childhood sexual abuse.
Okay.
And I really did not deal with that until I was battling breast cancer. And then God began to show me that I really needed to deal with this issue in my life, and that my performance issues were very shame-based. They were driven because of this need to look better and to have people like me, to keep everybody happy. And so God began to uproot that.
Tell me something, is that one of the telltale signs of sexual abuse, that, you know, you have to keep up this facade, you have to be something that you're really not? Do you feel that that stems from the
maybe a common indicator?
Yeah, it is definitely a common indicator, and there were a lot of indicators in my life. You know, I struggled with an eating disorder, kind of flew under the radar with that, a lot of fear, a lot of guilt, a lot of shame, and I think shame drives a lot of people to perform. And it may not be shame over sexual abuse. It may be shame messages that you received in childhood, you know, that you weren't smart.
Right.
So you come to adulthood and you try to prove to the world how brilliant you are.
What do you think is more difficult? To be free from applause for the person who never gets it so they want it, or the person who does get it and you know, to be free from it? Because it's not difficult for me necessarily, because I never get any applause.
Oh, here, I'll...
Great timing.
I didn't really deserve that. But, you know, which is maybe a better starting point?
You know, I don't know. I think our world is very performance driven, and particularly here in the United States. You know, we give awards, we're a very competitive society.
Well, every show is, you know, a competition, this, the best at that, you know, America's top whatever.
Absolutely. And so our kids are being raised with this idea, I matter if I come in #1.
Yeah.
Okay, so Becky, tell us, what is the definition, in your opinion, of performance? What do we mean? I know the great pretenders we are, but tell us, what does it mean, in your opinion, to perform?
You know, I think it's trying to look good to the world to get their approval so that you feel good about yourself.
So now, when did you make that turn?
You know, it was a process for me. I began to realize that my spiritual walk had become this rigorous self-improvement course, and it wasn't working because I wasn't improving. And so I began to go to the Lord and say, Lord, show me what I'm missing. And the Lord took me back to grace. And I had learned about grace as a child. I just hadn't seen it modeled. And grace tells me that I am fully known, loved, forgiven, empowered, and pursued by God. And once I get that straight, I don't have to worry about who's applauding me or who's accepting me, because God accepts me.
I think there's maybe a conception, you could maybe say a misconception, that if you're going to be a real Christian, that in the end, well, you're going to, you know, look really nice and, you know, kind of have this outward appearance of being very, you know, Christian.
Yeah, and I think, unfortunately, a lot of us come to faith in Jesus Christ, and initially we say, yes, I need the grace that Jesus offers because I'm a sinner. And that's right. So we come to Jesus, we accept his grace, but then we forget that we need grace for every day the rest of our life. And so then we try to hide our stuff from the world, and we try to put on a facade like, oh, I've arrived now, I'm spiritual, because then we think people are going to like us better.
Okay, so grace is getting a bum rap these days, the word grace, because then some people think that it's greasy grace, that we can just go and sin, we can just do what we want to do, and then say, well, the grace of God God is sufficient, and it is.
Yes.
So where do we draw the line there? I mean, grace is unlimited. But do you know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And you know, it's not a new problem. It seems
Right.
like it's new in our world, but Paul addressed this in Romans, and he said, does grace mean I can continue sinning?
That's exactly right.
Absolutely not. It means that it invites me into a deeper walk with Jesus Christ. Because of God's grace, I come and I say, Lord, I want to know you better. I don't want to perform better for you. I want to become more like you.
Okay.
You know?
Now, this is a 12-week, this is more of like a Bible study?
Yeah, it has 12 chapters, and there's a Bible study that women or men can do along with that, a daily dose of grace in kind of bite-sized pieces.
Now, I know the book is geared toward women, but
Yes.
men struggle with grace, but we really struggle. I would imagine women really struggle with performing and getting it right. You know, being the perfect mom, being the perfect
yeah.
Pastor's wife. Speak to that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I am a pastor's wife.
I know.
And we got married, I think, at 21 or 22. And, you know, this is a classic example of performance. I missed one church business meeting, and my husband thought at that point I could do anything. And so he had me voted in as the assistant church organist, which would have been fine if I'd known how to play the organ. I had no clue. I'd never touched it in my life.
My God.
And so until the day we left that church, I was on the records as the assistant church organist. But I had to figure out who I was. And, you know, there were all these voices telling me that as a pastor's wife, I had to be perfect. And so there's definitely that. But motherhood brings it to another whole level. You know, I was on the phone last night with a young woman who was crying with me on the phone because her toddler did something. And she was like, Mom, it was actually my daughter. And she's like, Mom, I think I'm a terrible mom. And we worry about this. Oh, no, you know, because of me, my child's going to spend thousands of dollars in therapy. You know, we cleared that right up with our kids. We just said, you know, we won't save for college, we'll just save for therapy.
Now, how important is having people around you to be free from performing? Because it almost seems like an individualized exercise because you're trying to be free from the applause of other people.
You know, that is such a great question, Drew, and I think it's essential to have people around us. We were never meant to walk our Christian walk in isolation. And so when we're living in community with others, we can look to them, and yet we don't get our self-worth from them. We can practice things like setting boundaries, saying no when we need to say no, and receiving affirmation, but understanding that that doesn't determine our self-worth.
Okay, you also talk about walking away from the bait. What does that mean?
That's a big issue for performers because we get offended easily.
Okay.
And when you go to the root word, the Greek of that word offense, it comes from the part of a trap where the bait was set. And I really believe that this is Satan's bait in our lives. He baits us with this. You know, somebody hurts our feelings, and as performers, we get hurt and we think, oh, how dare they think that of me, you know? And so we take the bait, and then we begin to develop bitterness on our hearts, and we don't want to offer forgiveness because we want to prove that we're better than what that person thinks we are.
Okay, so a life that's free from performance, what does it look like? You?
You know, it's a journey for sure.
Right, that's true.
A life that's free from performing is continually dependent on the Holy Spirit, continually dependent on God's grace. Lord, I need your grace every day. I need it this moment. I need it 5 minutes from now. I need it an hour from now. But I'm completely loved and accepted by you. I don't have to get gold stars on some chart to make you happy with me.
Now, do you think that some of it maybe has to be the resignation of celebrating, you know, like the Christian personality? Maybe it's in film or maybe it's in sports, but Christians tend to idolize, you know, like the Christian guy who's really good in his field.
Yeah.
And so it kind of, you know, stems from that where we want to be the best, and we want the best, whoever's out there, to be a Christian, because then we can kind of own that guy as ours.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And that does play into the whole performance mentality. And I don't think we should stop affirming each other. I'm a big believer in affirmation because we all need that. But it's just that we can't idolize people. You know, God said that we're to worship him alone. And when we put somebody up on a pedestal like that and we make them an idol, we're really setting ourselves up for failure, but we're also setting them up for failure because they begin to develop a false persona because they want to look better to the world. They want to keep up the persona that people have made of them.
Okay, so Becky, I have about 30 seconds left, but you also have a new project, rewriting your emotional script. Give me the skinny on that.
Okay.
On this one.
Rewriting your emotional script is a process of healing from childhood messages that were false. And so all of us received false messages, and we need to replace those messages by erasing them and replacing them with the truth found in God's Word.
Well, thank you today for sharing truth with us. I'm talking with Becky Harling, and she is the author of Freedom from Performing. If you'd like to get a copy of her book or you'd like to connect with Becky, go to BeckyHarling.com, or you know the drill, you can go to harvest-tv.com, click on show info in the menu bar for an easy way to link to her site. Don't go anywhere. There's more Harvest to come.